And our final speaker is Verity Morgan-Schmidt from the Farmers for Climate Action. And I think in her own words, she is formerly a farm girl from sheep and wheat country of Western Australia. And she was the inaugural CEO for the award-winning agriculture advocacy organization, Farmers for Climate Action. And she'll be speaking to us today. She will tell us how a grassroots community organization, Farmers for Climate Action, has grown and the challenges and opportunities it has faced, including what farmers are doing to transition.
Good evening, everyone. I know we're on the graveyard shift, so bear with me here. We're going to try to lighten things up just a little bit as we go through. It's been a tough afternoon. So, first thing I want everyone to think about, just for a second, in your mind's eye, conjure up, what does a farmer look like? You've got 2 seconds. I'm guessing for some of you, it may have looked something like this, maybe minus the heels. Now, just for a second longer, I want you to have a think. What comes to your mind's eye when you think about Australia's climate solutions? Is it the same mental image? And if it's not, why not? Perhaps it's time that we reframe this conversation and we put rural and regional Australia absolutely at the heart of the way that we engage with climate change. My name, as Michael said, is Verity, and I'm hardly a typical climate campaigner. My husband, full confession, is in the resources industry. Now, my life is in farming. I'm typically far more comfortable in farm boots than what I am in a Save the Whales t-shirt. And to add weight to my sins, to pick up on the question in the first session, I'm also currently from Queensland. So tonight, as you already know, we're talking about transformations, and tackling this ideological nexus that has occurred around Australia's climate policy. Now, Beck and Carolyn have already given you a wonderful grasp of the complexities of the psychological component. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the stories of Australian farmers and the way that they're going about dealing with climate change. But before I get onto that, there's something that I need each and every one of you to do when you walk out of here today. I'm not particularly known for my subtlety, so I'll come straight out with it. I need your help. And the reason I need your help is because since I was 12 years old, we've been having a conversation about how do we bridge the rural and urban divide. And this conversation started for me when I arrived at boarding school and was asked, do you actually have toilets out there? Now, I don't know that our rural and urban divide has actually been bridged since that question was asked. And what I need from all of you, when you walk out of here today, is to think about how you, with your phenomenal knowledge and expertise in so many different areas, what role are you going to play in bridging the rural and urban divide? Is it getting out to someone like John Ive and Robin Ive's place? Is it doing as Mark has so generously done, coming out and speaking to groups of farmers right around Australia and taking their knowledge back? Because we can't solve these challenges in either Kalingaring or in Canberra. We need to solve them by pulling those two components together. If you eat food or if you wear clothes, then you're part of this agriculture and climate change narrative. But now, to our farmers. Now, I sometimes joke that at FCA, we actually can't win. We are too green for some, we're not green enough for others, we are too gloomy, we are far too optimistic. We are in a very unique niche, in an industry that is known for its paradox between a conservative political and social alignment and for simultaneously fostering a culture of innovation. We are proudly an organisation run by farmers for farmers, and we put those on the front line of climate change front and centre in creating the climate solutions. Now, before I go any further, there's a few farmers in this room that I just quickly want to get to put their hands up. Lucinda, Charlie, Pete, you don't escape that easily. Hands up. Thank you. It took a minute. Now, when we finish tonight, please, if you don't already know those people who stuck their hands up, go and meet them. Because in the absence of political leadership, Lucinda, Charlie and Pete, some of the farmers who actually came together to say, well, how do we start to move this conversation? How do we tackle climate change on our own farms, whether that is renewable energy, whether that is aiming towards carbon neutrality for a beef business? How do we tackle climate change on our own farms and change this narrative and get past the political deadlock that we've been stuck in? Our work as an organisation is evidence-based, and we are so grateful to the support of the scientific and research community for enabling us to keep it so. And our model is scalable, and our model is inclusive. We meet farmers where they are at on their climate journey. And I think that is key to these conversations. We bring farmers together. It's a formula that is working, and times they are slowly changing. Conversation in regional Australia is changing around climate. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. And tonight I've been asked to also touch on some of the challenges that we've experienced, and then to go to where we see some of the biggest opportunities. I'll get to that in a minute. Now, my family's been farming in WA since 1836. Now, over that time, like many other farming families, we've adapted to the changing climate. Farmers are tough. Farmers are adaptive. For the most part, farmers are pretty good, astute business people, because if they weren't, they simply wouldn't still be out there. However, here's the rub, and this is where it gets a bit challenging. Our capacity to adapt doesn't necessarily mean that we have engaged proactively with climate science. And this is a little anecdotal survey that an agronomist from the Midwest of Western Australia put on Twitter quite recently. And what I found most interesting was the dark blue line, being unsure but adapting. So to me, that begs a really, really interesting question of what do we think we're adapting to? We know that the language around the new normal is problematic because, frankly, 1 degree is not the new normal. We're heading beyond that, as Mark and Robert have already said. Where do limits to this sort of adaptation actually sit? Does a history of adaptive capacity actually strengthen our ability to respond to the scale of the challenge, or does it actually throw up its own challenges? Are we able to simply use the same adaptive strategies that we have used to continue into an increasingly uncertain future? And I think the conversation that we need to have recognises that it's no longer appropriate to simply be doing incremental adaptation, which has got us a long way so far. We actually need to be able to have these conversations about systemic and transformational change. And you've already heard that language in the first session. They're scary topics, challenging to engage with, which is why it's so important that farmers and researchers are able to come together to start bridging the divides and actually have a conversation about how you do transformational change in Australian agriculture. Now, let's be absolutely frank about this. You've already heard the impact that climate change is having on Australian ag. We know data came out from ABARES, I think we've got some from ABARES here, that 22% in farm gate profitability have been reported as a result of the changing climate. For a farmer in the grips of drought, turning the sprinklers on dairy cattle during a heat wave, pumping water out of their sugarcane after coastal inundation, or working out how on earth they were going to keep cattle alive after having 4 fires sweep through their dairy farm in a 6-week period, climate change conversations are pretty tough to have. For many farmers, this sentiment is echoed. There's a feeling that no matter what you are doing on the farm, you are still not quite keeping pace with the scale of change. Unfortunately, the she'll be right attitude is just no longer cutting it. And that's why farmers are really leading the way in climate solutions on farm and looking to increasingly do so beyond the farm gate. However, we're not going to beat around the bush on this. The relationship between the land sector and climate is complicated as well. Whether it is our belching cows, our nitrous oxide, our diesel tractors, our vegetation management, I did say I was from Queensland, discussions on climate change in agriculture can be deeply challenging. And from time to time, they come from a place that is not evidence-based. They come from a place of fear and of concern that actually the soy latte sippers from inner city Canberra are coming out to tell me how to run my business. And this is where having farmers talking to farmers, having groups that recognise and engage with each other and know where each other is at. These conversations, as Beth has already said, are increasingly critical to reaching the solutions that we need to deal with this challenge. Evidence-based policy, appropriate voices, trust. Trust, absolutely key. It's time for us to really change this conversation. And this is what FCA does. And this is where, as someone who lives in rural and regional Australia and has done so most of my life, I actually get quite excited. Because as Rosado has pointed out quite recently, we have the potential to be an absolute superpower. And rural and regional Australia has the potential to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that transition. Building stronger regions through decentralised renewable energy, carbon sequestration, and landscape restoration create employment, supports farm productivity, and it diversifies regional economies. Lower methane cattle for more efficient cattle. These are win-win scenarios that can actually revitalise and bring energy back into areas of Australia that have experienced extended periods of decline. And this is not just rhetoric. Go and talk to the farmers who I've already pointed out, and you'll hear a bit more about their stories. But before I do, you get a chance to do that, I want to share some of these farmers. So up here, we have Pete Naylor. Anyone, hands up if you know where Bogabilla is. You all did really well. There's a reason I'm giving this talk at university. So Pete Naylor up on the border at Bogabilla. He's gone into solar farming. Typically, grain producer, been around industry politics for a long time, now finds that solar farming for him is actually better money, safer money, because you're not having to wait for the rain, and it's easier money. For him, as a farmer, as a business manager, as a bloke who's got one eye on the future, this is a smart business choice. It just happens to be an added bonus that he actually generates enough power for 3,000 homes. Over here, we've got some wind turbines in the back, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, but I reckon those wind turbines might be contributing to the power in this building as we speak. Those wind turbines are supporting regional communities within an hour and a half of where we sit right now. And it's farmers and the communities that they support that are helping drive that change. Over here, we've got a photo that breaks my heart a little bit because this that you can see in the photo is 5-year-old Noah. And Noah's parents found one out near Narromine in central New South Wales. And they had the foresight to actually say, well, how can we reduce our farm business costs? How can we actually look after the environment for Noah when she grows up? And so they installed Australia's largest solar diesel hybrid system for their irrigation. So that solar farm that they have there, which they've taken and put in place to be able to look after the future, was then within a couple of years engulfed in dust storm after dust storm after dust storm. Farmers are feeling the impacts, they're leading the way on the solutions. However, it goes beyond just renewables. And everyone's got hungry because we are moving to the food section, and also the environment. Because farmers are getting involved with carbon neutral agriculture. So up here, we've got young Al Talek, who's actually at Kid Talek Wines, which is the Hunter Valley's first certified carbon neutral vineyard. And they're incredibly proud of that decision. It's making good business sense for them, they're getting a lot of interest. And yet at the same time, they've done that because they know that land custodianship for their bit of dirt is incredibly important for the next generations, for Al and his sister and for whoever else comes after them. We've also got the agri-corporates leading the way. So the sausages down the bottom, which should be making you all hungry. Carbon neutral. Arcadian has led on that. And then up the top, We've got a fully integrated supply chain in Western Australia, which is not only regenerating and restoring the landscape and wheat belt, it's actually selling food in turn, the dirty clean foods, direct to supermarkets, direct to restaurants, and is able to tell the story of the landscape restoration that is happening along that supply chain. These are some of the examples of what farmers are already doing. But regional Australia cannot do this alone. And that's why just 2 weeks ago, Farmers for Climate Action launched the Show Our Colours campaign. Farmers across Australia have been donning yellow, painting their sheds, quite a large light ring. If anyone's passing through Breezer, don't hesitate to go and see the ring on the shed. Painting their farm sheds and their farm gates in a campaign which has so far engaged over 235,000 people. This is huge reach for these campaigns to be having in such a short period of time. And what that says to me is that now is the moment, in the wake of the fires, in the wake of the challenges that we've experienced, now is the time when we have a really good chance to bridge that rural-urban divide and to put rural and regional Australia, again, at the forefront of creating climate solutions. I'm just going to skip back one, bear with me. So, we've got farmers doing things at an individual level. Some of them painting their sheds yellow. Others, like over in the West, are actually investigating how they can get the entire Western Australian agricultural sector at an industry level to be carbon neutral by the year 2030. This is an extraordinarily audacious aim. Now, whether or not they're actually going to get there in that time frame, to me, is actually a separate question. What is most extraordinary about this is that this is a producer-led initiative. This group has been self-organising, and they've kicked off something which is attracting the support of the Western Australian Ag Minister, it's attracting the support of the department, it is starting to change the conversation at a national level because WA has said, hey, we've got a group of producers over here. We're going to try to get to this direction. More broadly, the red meat sector as a carbon neutral target by 2030. A lot of the research has been done. We understand some of the pathways that we need to go down, but we need to see the investment to actually make that happen, to support producers who are determined to go to farm gate level, and to support the industry more broadly to actually achieve that target. We have industry sustainability frameworks. We have one in beef, we have one in dairy, we have one in sheep, and we have one in grain being developed as well for the very first time. Farmers are really keen to actually be able to showcase the work that they are doing to support sustainability on farms, and they're keen to share that story with the broader community. Just last year, Farmers for Climate Action actually partnered with the Australian Farm Institute to prepare a report entitled Change in the Air. And I'm happy to send an electronic copy because we're trying to avoid cutting down the trees to anyone who would like one, because what this report sought to do was to actually set out what is required to create a national strategy on climate change and agriculture. How do we rise to these challenges that are facing us when we've dealt with 22% decline in farm gate profitability, when we're dealing with an increasingly uncertain future? What is the architecture that is required to give farmers the certainty to invest? Some of the same farmers that were involved in that also sat down and prepared a future report to outline what could a vision more broadly for rural and regional Australia actually look like. And copies of that report are available in the lobby if anyone would like to have a look. But what these two initiatives demonstrate to the audience is that farmers, rural Australians, are increasingly ready for these conversations. They're increasingly ready to be able to hold far more than two concepts in their headset, so challenge for you, and to really start implementing the solutions to revitalise our communities. So, in closing, go back to my starting point. Rural and regional Australia really does stand at a crossroads, and it's a cliche, but I think if there was ever a time to use that cliche, this might be that moment. After years of drought, flooding, Queensland, we do things differently. We do. Now fire, recovery, rebuilding, and what resilience truly means like peak needs are all front of mind. And we know that climate change cannot be solved by the same kind of questioner that led to me having to explain that actually, no, we didn't have to use long drops in bank carbon, we have moved on since there. What we need to see is these divides that have existed between rural and regional Australia and our friends. And I say that because people in the cities are our friends. We're all in this together. We need to be able to bridge those divides because, frankly, business as usual is not an option for any of us.